top of a dune called Mount Tom. In the distance you can see Lake Michigan. About 10,000 years ago during the Ice Age, Lake Michigan was actually just a glacier, and the lake that we know today was formed from that glacier when it pulled back and came forward and pulled back and came forward as the climate during the Ice Age changed. And every time it would pull back, the stuff that was left behind that it had been carrying would just be left in big piles. So here you can see all these piles of sand that form these dunes. There's actually an ancient beach about 5,500 years old that used to be where Lake Michigan stopped. And then as it pulled back and sort of the level of the lake went down, this sand was left behind. These layers of stuff left behind from glaciers are called moraines. And you can trace how old the glacier is and how quickly the glacier melted and moved and how quickly it became a lake by looking at layers of sediment in the moraines and analyzing the chemistry of the little sediments. One of the mistakes a lot of people make is calling climate change global warming, because that assumes that the temperature is just going to rise everywhere. But there's a lot of different impacts when climate change takes place. Some places get warmer, some get colder, some get drier, some get wetter, and some places get wet and dry in cycles that they're not used to. These boards you see on the trail are because of excessive rains that happened recently, but this place was just under a drought watch and a bunch of wildfires a few years ago. Either way, the plants and animals in this area and the people in this area aren't adapted to either of these two things. And so you get too much of one or too much of the other, and it starts to really throw the ecosystem out of whack. And both of those are due to random climate effects that are due to the amount of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, and so that cascading impact is going to lead to the boards. This is the second trail that we've been trying to hike that has been closed because forest fires caused some destruction. Some of the trees have fallen due to they haven't been able to get enough fog for them to be able to survive, and they've fallen on like shelters and on ranger stations. Just to think about like some of the tangible impacts of climate change, part of the reason that we can't access this trail today, and the reason that like it may not even necessarily open in time because of other issues, because of wildfires in 2008 that still have caused enough damage that the area has not fully recovered. Now obviously people are doing what they can to recover these areas, but if the climate keeps getting worse and worse and worse, these kinds of trails are going to be totally gone and lost to us. And areas like this, which have been shrinking for the past couple centuries, will no longer. Look down below me, there's a tree where you can kind of see the roots, you can see the leaves. This tree must have fallen out pretty recently because the leaves are still green. In the past couple of weeks, there's been a lot of rains in southern and central California, a lot more than they're used to, and a lot of things like this happen, where the roots become loose from the soil after a lot of runoff and a lot of erosion, and the tree just falls down. The roots can hold on to the soil as long as the soil's there, but once it's gone, there's nothing more it can do, and it's at the victim of the rains and the winds.